Next up, very excited and honored to introduce a brilliant investor, Luciana, who's partner at Sequoia Capital. Luciana focuses on enterprise, consumer tech companies across Europe and co-leads Sequoia's early stage investment business. She's a director of Pennylane, Robco, Stripe, Tacto, and VEED. Our chat today will be about who are the daring people who will build the next legendary European companies. Luciana, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello. Hi, Evan and everyone. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure and my honor to be here today. I hope you can hear me well.
We can hear you perfectly, and I know
Great.
we've got a tight schedule, but we're going to fit it perfectly in. And
it's all good.
Fantastic. Well, it's good to see you. I in person is always more enjoyable. Virtual is great, and it benefits hundreds of people in the audience that are listening. So we're going to break up today into like a little bit of past and present and future and interactive as you want, Luciana, and we'll just kind of take it away. So you grew up in Romania, and one of the things I love in your Sequoia bio, and I know it was even before you agreed to join us, is that you're inspired to go to the US from an image, from reading and sitcoms. And an image obviously relates to our visual tech thesis at LDV and what we're all talking about today. So tell us a little bit about that, and how did that inspire you to move to the US, and then we'll take on the next steps.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for asking. And honestly, it's now so long ago. But why do I say that, the image of the United States inspired me? Because I had never actually been to the United States when I decided that I wanted to build my career there. That's what I thought at the time. And now I'm in London, and I'll tell you the story. But so I grew up in a pretty small town in Romania, like 100,000 people. So I go, small city, let's say, in Romania.
Sure.
Not particularly tech forward, to say the least. And I hadn't traveled much to Western Europe, and I had never been to the US. But, the US had and has this image of the land of opportunity and meritocracy, and the place where you go to work really hard to make special things happen. And I thought, I was 16 at the time. I guess it was my way of being rebellious. And I thought that is for me. I want to give it a shot. I want to go and work hard and change things and build an interesting life for myself. And it was indeed really life-changing. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship. And, at Sequoia, we talk often about crucible moments, these moments that really change the path forward. And if I have to pick one, this is probably the crucible moment for me, having a chance to study in the US. And it was, really, really eye-opening. And one thing led to another, and that's how I got into venture capital from there.
That's an amazing story. And I'm curious, what was the sitcom, Luciana? Do you remember like which one you loved the most? Or if there was one, I don't know, just curious. Because
this is going to be very embarrassing.
No.
Okay, so I was 14, 15 at the time.
Sure.
It's actually really embarrassing. It was a lot, but the one that I remember was do you remember Beverly Hills?
Sure, of course.
Oh, as a teenager, I was like, wow, that looks really fun. Anyway, and then many others, but that's one that I remember. Yeah,
I love it. I appreciate you sharing that with us. So then you went on to Georgetown and worked at Morgan Stanley.
Yes.
But then why venture? So I mean, tell us a little bit about kind of how you made decisions. One of the things we love. Everybody takes different paths, and there's many people in the audience that are trying to figure out where to go and how to choose their paths. And I look, as my career evolved, I had ideas of what I wanted to do, but if I look back, it makes a lot of sense. But each different choice, I never thought I'd become a venture capitalist, and I would actually tell people I'd never going to do that. And here we are.
And I will say, I think for me at least, everyone, I guess, has their own way of making decisions, but I definitely think that I also got lucky along the way. And needless to say, you have to, do your best and make an effort and work hard to put yourself in opportunities where you may get lucky. Because I know a lot of people think that venture capital is just about luck. It's not quite like that. But I definitely feel, that I got lucky with a lot of the decisions that I made along the way. One of them was getting into venture capital. I grew up in communist and post-communist Romania. Technology wasn't a thing, but my dad was a small entrepreneur. So when communism fell, he tried a lot of things. He had a shoe store at some point. He had a car dealership at some point. He had a bakery at some point. So, never big businesses, always small businesses. But that's how we supported our family. And I guess I always had, just a soft spot and appreciation for just how hard it is
Sure.
to make it every single day. And you're responsible for your family, but you're responsible for employees, and to keep it going. So I always had a soft spot for entrepreneurship growing up with my small business dad. And then I got more into technology, of course, when I went to the US. And honestly, it wasn't a difficult decision at all. It was I had such a strong instinct about it. And I would say that I was at Summit Partners for a couple of years, but I started understanding technology and investing in technology when I joined Accel, which was at the end of 2011. And that was a really great journey. I was there for over 8 years. And it was an interesting time and adventure in Europe in particular. I'm based in London, as I mentioned. If you ask me, that's when the technology ecosystem really got started in Europe. It's we're a bit younger here from a maturity perspective, and it was a formative 8 years for European tech, and I got to work with some of the founders that I think really defined technology in Europe, and that was really fun. But to go back to your decision-making point, I don't know, it was very obvious to me. And then since then, it's very obvious to me every single morning when I wake up, I want to do this job. People sometimes ask me if I want to start a company at some point or if it ever crossed my mind. And honestly, I just love what I do so much. And I'm such an investor at heart that I never doubted my path since. So I would say it was a natural decision then, and it's just been a very natural decision every single day since.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, I think natural decisions are the most important ones. When they're forced, usually, not all the time, but they don't always happen the way people want them to happen. I think it's got to be a genuine passion. As you were at Accel, so you've invested in some exciting, valuable companies, UiPath, Deliveroo before Sequoia, and we'll get to the present and future in a minute. But talk to us a little bit about UiPath. Obviously, a company near and dear to our heart. We haven't invested, but the early days and continues to leverage computer vision. And so, tell us a little bit how you met that team and how you initially got your conviction.
No, it does. And maybe just one sentence on UiPath and computer vision. I think that's really what unlocked the growth of the company. And the thesis there is that there's so many different systems, especially legacy systems in large corporates that don't really talk to each other. And thanks to UiPath and thanks to the computer vision technology that they developed, it's kind of like a glue between all these different solutions that now can talk to each other. And that's how you automate these back office processes. So computer vision was really the unlock there. It's a Romanian company. And what are the odds?
It's great. Obviously, I wasn't going to bring it up. I was going to let you bring it up.
Yeah, I never thought I would invest in a Romanian company, to be honest. It's a very, very small tech ecosystem. We do have great engineers and great math people. We have that school is very strong. But I met, like I said before, I think in venture, it's a lot about serendipity, but you have to be out there and make sure that you get yourself in those situations where serendipity may come together. And I met the seed investor of UiPath. I was actually visiting family, and I thought I would just take a Friday to see what's happening in the ecosystem. And I met some interesting seed investors in Europe, and one of them said, "Hey, there is this company I invested in. It was Early Bird. That's a seed fund." And I remember thinking, process automation. This makes a lot of sense. People do a lot of boring, repetitive tasks all day long. Wow, if there's a product that can take some of this away from humans, wouldn't that be exciting? So I immediately thought it was very interesting. And then I got in touch with Daniel, and I would say the rest is history.
Yeah. Did you meet Jem at Early Bird? Is that who you met when you were over there?
I know him, but this was
a good friend of ours.
Oh, he's wonderful. Yes. I've known him in the ecosystem for a long time. So this was his partner at the time, Dan Lupu. And I remember with Daniel, because I'm sure you want to chat a bit about founders, because at the end of the day, we're in a people business, as we always say.
That's right.
Yes. I think what really impressed me, we talk a lot about scale of ambition. And I think when you sit in the Valley or when you sit in London, it's much easier to think, I want to build a really big company because there are a lot of people around you who've done it before. But when you're in a small ecosystem where no one has actually been successful before, to have the scale of ambition that Daniel had at the time really, really stood out to me. So after that meeting, you know, of course, we did our homework and our due diligence, but I would say it became pretty obvious it could be a large company.
And sure. So, and it's interesting. So I know, what percent of the time do you think you have a good idea that it's likely an investment opportunity in that first meeting or the first hour? Obviously, you have to do all the due diligence and double check, but do you frequently feel like, or ever feel that it's a high probability in those first seconds or minutes, or does it take time to get to the conviction?
I'm going through various opportunities in my head right now.
Okay.
So for me, two things need to happen to really get excited about an opportunity. So certainly that first meeting is usually exciting when you end up investing and you have a great impression and you think, wow, I want to be in business with these founders and I like the market behind this company.
Right.
Those things definitely need to happen, but typically that's the thinking fast, right? And then the thinking slow, usually, you know, my best decisions are when the thinking slow and thinking fast get you to the same conclusion. So then I also like to go back and take my time and do my homework and do my due diligence. And if the excitement is still there, typically that means it might be a good decision and it's venture capital and you never know, of course. No, you're wrong as often as you're right. But usually, yes, I would say the thinking fast and thinking slow need to get you to the right conclusion to really, in my experience, to make a good decision. The other thing I'll mention, and my partner Rulof actually talks about this often, usually if you have a good first meeting, if the next meetings feel better and better and you learn more and more, that's a really good sign. Because sometimes, you know, there's a great first impression, but when you start digging deeper and deeper, you lose elevation. Like obviously that's, you know, that's not good. You want to just gain elevation in every meeting and every due diligence call.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because internally in our team, I mean, much smaller team than yours, but we have a rating system, 0 to 10. And if the ratings go down over time, well, that's not a negative. It's a negative signal that that's not a right fit for conviction for us, because we're only investing in 4 to 6 teams a year. But I think it's always got to kind of continue to get more increase, and check the boxes to be more positive. One thing before we go to the present couple of questions we have, I want to go to the kind of early days of UiPath, just to understand as an investor, that took quite a while before.
Yes.
I mean, you know, obviously the success of UiPath today, a public company, is phenomenal. But in the early days, it took several years. Tell us a little bit about like the challenging or when did you see the tipping point, or when did, as an investor, what, give us a little bit of the challenges and insights there, because not everybody knows in the early days there was challenges.
We did this exercise, and we looked at many companies that were successful. Sorry, and I'll get to your question, but it's relevant.
No, I want to hear the backstory. Great.
Many companies that were successful. Different companies take different times to product market fit. So, I mean, Wiz is a great example, given, you know, you might have seen the news. I mean, Wiz from getting started to getting to 1 million in run rate, it was very fast. I don't remember the exact period of time, but it was very fast. Figma, on the other hand, took its time to really build the product for quite some time, over years. And then when it reached $1 million in ARR, it started growing really, really fast. Why do I use $1 million? Directionally, some people can think of that as product market fit. Now, I don't want to get into whether that's right or not, or wrong. Now, what most successful companies do have in common, however, is that once they get to product market fit, they get from 1 million to 10 million in run rate in like 18 months or less. So we looked at a lot of data, and you want to see that when things are working, they're really, really working, but it could take a while to get things to work, because sometimes you're just investing in product and you're building a product, you're solving a hard problem and you're building a product that takes a while to build. Sometimes you're zigging and zagging or pivoting, right? So I think what matters most is when you start selling, is it working and do customers want your product? Not as much how long it takes from zero to product market fit. Now, UiPath is an outlier. To be honest, it was 9 years. I think
Right.
it's
I mean, it took a
it's
while. I mean,
the longest. But I will say they were doing a few different things before and then pivoted into RPA later on.
and what was the tipping point? Do you remember that you said, okay, we got it? Like, okay, you guys got it. You found it. What, you remember what that tipping point was? Or maybe
I
it was a
do.
couple.
Uh, the one thing that really stood out was the reference calls. I remember speaking to customers and they were so hungry for automation. I mean, we see it with everything that's happening in AI, right?
Right.
People are really, really hungry for automation, and those were just very, very enthusiastic customer calls.
Fantastic. So one thing before, in the last question before we move on, there is this interesting, kind of topic of many people wonder whether or not, is it more important to invest in the founder? Is it more about the people, or is it more about the business model and market? And you mentioned, I think, in your bio, like in the early days, as you transitioned into venture, was more your priority was more about the business model and market versus now more the people. What was that tipping point, and how'd you switch from the one to the other?
I mean, to be honest, I think I I probably lack the maturity to really understand people, to be honest. I have
I
a
think that's very modest. I think you get it very quickly, but
no,
okay.
at the time when I
Okay.
got started. So I have a math background. I come from a numbers background. It was just much more natural to me to look at some of the data. We're trying to understand the market structure and make decisions that way. That said, in the past, 15 years, working with people, the one thing that successful companies have in common is the quality of the founding team. That is
Right.
the one and only. You can be going after totally different markets, totally different products, technologies, market timing, you name it. The one common denominator is the strength of the founding team. And I learned that over time. And I still like a good market. Don't get me wrong.
Sure, of course.
I still think that's important. But we say this all the time, and it sounds a bit cliche, but it's true. It's all about people at the end of the day.
It is. We 200% agree. We obviously invest pre-inc and pre-revenue, pre-product, and it's all
Then
about the
even
people. You can't even look at data then, and it's
then you don't
about
even have the data. Exactly.
exactly, people run businesses, people hire people, people fire people, people make revenue. It's not that the company. So you've mentioned that you're still excited about some sectors. Let's talk about different sectors that you're in. I mean, UiPath, Deliveroo, Pennylane, Miro, and others. Which sectors excite you the most these days in the coming days? I know it's all about the people, but let's put that aside for a second. Are there certain sectors that excite you more than others that you want to share?
For sure. I will say that I think about the world more bottom up than top down. So I meet an interesting person with an interesting idea, and then I'm really excited to do my homework, even if I may not have a thesis on the space yet. That said, of course, directionally, there are areas that are more interesting than others. I will not talk about application AI companies because everyone is talking about application AI companies. I think it's a great space to invest. So, but we I think robotics is quite interesting. And we've been investing in robotics for some years, even before, again, people talked about embodied AI or robotics or however you want to call it. But I do think that the next frontier for AI is robots performing more and more unstructured use cases and taking on more and more of this repetitive human labor. I also think labor shortage is actually quite an issue today in the manufacturing world, in factories. It's not even that these companies are looking for ROI. Sometimes that they just cannot find the people to fill these jobs. So I definitely think that robotics and embodied AI, both from a need perspective and obviously from a technology perspective, today we can do more and more. And wow, what the next 5 years will bring to robotics, I'm so excited to see. And of course, we're talking about computer vision. This is a core component because a robot needs to understand its environment in order to go and act on the process that needs to be performed. So I think that's really quite interesting. I think fintech is quite considered a bit unsexy today, but I think there are really interesting things happening in fintech. I'm also a bit biased because Europe actually has a tradition of great fintech companies, and I think we hold our own with the US when it comes to fintech. We have as many successful companies. So I think fintech is interesting as well. those are a couple of sectors that come to mind. But again, we meet a great founder building in something totally new. That's, we'll go and do our homework.
Sure. That makes sense. I mean, obviously you're on the board of Stripe and there's others like TransferWise, now Wise. There's lots of great successful
Good companies.
tech companies.
Yeah, many. Yeah, Pennylane, Monzo, many
Pennylane.
companies out of Europe.
Exactly. You mentioned Roloff earlier, who's a friend. I've known him forever. And one of the things I love that he says, we talked to him last year on our fireside chat, is it's all about being contrarian and right.
And right,
exactly. Exactly. So what contrarian? I mean, okay. Is there anything that, sectors out there that, you think today is, people would think is crazy, but it really intrigues you? It might not be something that you're looking to invest today, or is there anything out there? What would be the most contrarian kind of a sector or something in your mind? For us, I mean, we're doing a lot of synthetic biology. Some thinks it's contrarian, some think it's not contrarian. I mean, obviously there's a perspective that can change.
I don't know that I have a great example for contrarian today, but I'll give you some examples of companies that were contrarian at the time.
Sure, great.
Let's say non-sexy, because in venture there are areas that are of interest to everyone, and then there are areas that are.
I love boring businesses make a lot of money. That we love that.
Exactly.
So go with that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I will say when we invested in Pennylane, it wasn't, it's an accounting company. Who cares about accounting for SMEs? Obviously, QuickBooks in the US and Intuit is, that's a great business. But it was like, you have to go country by country, and we can invest in like sexy AI stuff, or we can invest in accounting. It wasn't, I would say it was not on the sexy side at all. And I think that's the nice thing about being at Sequoia, that we are super, super excited to dig into spaces that might not be on top of everyone's mind. I mean, I will say, and just to give credit to some of my partners, we invested in SpaceX years ago when I really don't think it was obvious. And in a bunch of our companies, like Airbnb early on, I wasn't there, but I'm told the conversation was who's gonna sleep in other people's houses, and today it feels so obvious. So I do feel lucky to be in a partnership that is really open-minded to crazy ideas, boring ideas, but yes, also ideas that are obvious.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, let's jump to the next question. So another one, kind of a quote that I saw, it might have been an article or that you were talking about, is that every single company can die in 1,000 different ways and succeed in just a couple. And so, I mean, one of the challenges that I have after being an entrepreneur for 18 years with success and failures is there's many things to potentially empower and coach and help entrepreneurs. But, there's so many things at a given time. How do you choose when and how to kind of, empower entrepreneurs to succeed in your own style and, to avoid some of those ways that they could fail and help them succeed?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really hard building a successful company, over a decade plus. I don't know any examples that were always up and to the right. It's not possible. So I think if there's one indicator of success, I don't know if I can help there. I don't think I can, but I'll share. If there's one indicator of success in my experience in the early days, is speed of execution and just getting stuff done quickly. What does it mean? It means that you might not make the right decision, but if you try quickly, you iterate, you pick yourself up and try again very quickly if that wasn't the right decision. So if the companies that, just get a lot done quickly, those are the companies that typically in the long term surprise for the upside. So I don't know if it's advice. And again, every company is unique. Every founding team is unique. But I think speed of execution is the biggest indicator of future success, like in the early days. And then as much as you can scale that, because of course it dilutes as teams get bigger and bigger, right? Sure. It's much harder to really fast with hundreds of people, thousands of people versus 20 people. And I think the more you can ingrain that in your culture and your processes at scale, like just the better it is long term. I
That
don't
makes
know.
sense. And I think in relation to that, that's something I'll add, but and you might agree, is kind of helping, making decisions that help the focus. And so there, I might not know the answers of the decisions that a team would have to make, but helping in discussions about how to, empower them to choose the right focus is then what help them potentially scale. And it's one of those things we talked earlier, actually, with Victor from Synthesia was on a fireside chat earlier. And he said one of the biggest challenges is the world's so noisy. Every customer wants so many different things. Being able to focus and execute on the most important things is the most valuable, but sometimes the hardest.
That's a great answer from Victor, and I'm not surprised he's building a great company.
Yeah, he's doing great. So next question. So, LDV has been investing in Europe for about 12 years since we started, and one of our early ones is actually with Sequoia with Mapillary that sold to Facebook. Can you give us an example of one or two of the portfolio companies, either yours or across Sequoia, that's leveraging visual take that it could be Robco, VEED, or other. What example or use case of visual tech powering a business intrigues you the most? Or obviously you love all your companies, but just give the audience an example of one.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you, Evan.
That's okay.
I think Robco is a good example, and it's really the thesis that I mentioned before around embodied AI. They decided to take it one step further and vertically integrate when it comes to vision, as opposed to working with off-the-shelf solutions. They feel that makes their robot it performs much better. And when you're in industrial settings, stability and reliability is really important. You can't get it 95% right. You have to get it 100% right. So there, just the number of use cases that adding vision to the robot unlocks that's just incredible. They can perform so much more for their customers. So I think that's actually a really good example.
That's great. One of the things that are very important, obviously, we were talking about earlier about the people that we invest in. And I sometimes like these questions that are overly simplified. So in a one-word answer, what's the best personality trait of an entrepreneur and the least best personality trait of an entrepreneur?
You're putting me on the spot, Evan.
I do with everybody, Luciana. It's not just you. Everybody gets the same questions.
These are good questions. With entrepreneurs, I definitely think grit.
Yeah.
It's just
sure.
You have to have it. You can't have thin skin. You have to be able to get up when you fall down, because you definitely will fall down more than once while building a company. Is grit for sure. And then the second question, remind me, please.
Least favorite personality trait.
Oh, do I have to answer this?
Yeah, I'll answer it first, and then you can think of it. So I think, almost like self-centered or selfish, and it's all about them. Usually, it's about that means that it's not about a team effort and about a team building a business. It's all about one individual person. So it doesn't have to be negative on people. Everybody, it could be positive, negative.
Yeah. I don't know the one word, but I'll tell you the trait. I think you have to like to bring up talent and identify talent and mentor people. I think there are a lot of people who are incredibly smart, high intellectual horsepower, super driven, intense, but just like to work on their own and like to do their own thing and don't have that much patience for mistakes and people around them, maybe for them not to be perfect. And I think then being a founder and CEO of a company, I think that's hard. I think wanting to bring up talent, wanting the people around you to succeed. I don't know what the one word is, but I think you have to have that.
I think you're right. Who inspires you every single day?
I work with many people at Sequoia who inspire me every single day, for sure. I mean, the reason why I decided to join a bit over 4 years ago was that, I think some of the people I work with shaped venture capital, and it's just, it's amazing to see them in action every day. My husband inspires me too.
Oh, that's great.
I'm biased, obviously, I married him, but he inspires me both, just in kindness and humanity, but also he's an entrepreneur himself. And I mean, the dedication and seeing him, do what he does day in, day out, it definitely inspires me.
And so the next question is, what's the most difficult part of your job? For me, it's saying no 1,000 million times a year, which I can't stand. I don't know if it's the same for you or if there's anything else.
You stole my answer, to be honest. I always whenever I get asked that question, that's it. It's because you're saying no to someone's baby. It's almost like saying your baby's ugly. I don't know. It's, and this person gave up something to build a company, and it's hard, and so to this day, saying no, especially once I spent a bunch of time with the founder and built a rapport with the founder, I like to say not now, and it's true. Oftentimes it's not now. We oftentimes get it wrong and then may invest later on. But that's my answer as well.
No, I agree. I mean, I think they're in business and entrepreneurialism. There really is a no. The no doesn't exist. It always means not now. And there's always new progress, a new customer developer, new hires or new progress that could always inspire people in the future. And I think it goes back to your statement of grit, I believe. Let's end it up. We got a couple minutes left. I would say one of the challenge, I think, two questions. One first is one of the challenge I hear a lot is with all the noise of hype cycles, how do you see the signal to the noise in your mind? Or how do you is there any advice for other investors or other entrepreneurs? Sometimes it gets so noisy out there and it drives me crazy sometimes. And try to kind of clear the head and take a walk or do something. What do you do? Or is there any tricks that you have to deal with finding a signal to the noise?
Honestly, it's one of the things about this job that is difficult. I also in our industry, FOMO is quite strong as well, which
Sure.
noise combined with FOMO is not good. I really try to focus and be deliberate and just tell myself just focus on the company you're working with, focus on the company you're looking at. It's so easy to get distracted. I think that being able to prioritize actually is one of the most important things in this job, and just take whatever I'm taking this week and I'm just looking at one company, or I'm taking a period, a couple of days, and I'm just focused on this one portfolio company that has this big question in front of them, and it's a strategic decision and they have to get to the right decision. And I don't want to just shoot from the hip when I give them advice. I want to do my homework. So I would say, yeah, I say no a lot to meetings, and I've learned this later in life. Honestly, I promise you, there are probably at least, I don't know, probably at least 10% of the meetings you take, you could actually skip. So I've learned to say no to meetings just for the sake of doing meetings. And I'm not perfect at it, but I say no a lot more than I used to, and try to free up that time and allocate it in like chunks. Someone told me, a very successful CEO, he used to start at 4 a.m., start working at 6, and then until 10, it was just thinking time. Not meeting time, thinking time. That's 4 hours of, clearing your head and making decisions. I don't do that, but maybe I should. I just heard this. So I think cutting out noise from your calendar is the first step, and then having chunks of time, not half an hour meeting, half an hour. Like then you can't really go deep in your thoughts. Having chunks of time when you can really think about problems, whether it's for portfolio companies or new investments. I think that's important.
I think that's great advice. I try to do that as far
It's
as different
hard.
chunks, and then other things get filled in. I was supposed to be working on
5 meetings appear in your calendar, right?
Yeah, I was supposed to be working on today's presentation, my keynote last week, 5 different times, and then it ended up having to be done on Sunday because they all get booked. So I it's a balancing act. The last question, just before you go, what's one sentence or two of advice for entrepreneurs that want to start a business but are kind of stuck making the jump into the business? What's your advice to them?
I don't know that I have advice that's, one size fits all. I would say choose wisely when it comes to co-founders.
Right.
It's, if ideally you've worked with this person before, or at least you've known them for socially for quite some time, it's probably the most important decision you make, actually, or one of
It's
the
all
most
about the people. It ties back to what you're saying earlier, Luciana. It's all about the people,
Yeah.
right?
And then, so that would be the first one. The second one, there has to be some level of obsession with the problem you're trying to solve.
Right.
If it's theoretically interesting, at some point when it gets hard, you're not going to want to do it anymore. If it's a problem that, really burns if you don't solve it, because you've experienced it before, because your friends have experienced it before, whatever it might be, I think that that's important.
I love it. Fantastic advice. Luciana, this has been really enjoyable. We could, like many of the sessions today, we could talk for hours. It's the end of our session, and I'm sure the audience has loved all your advice. Thank you again for joining us, and hope to see you in person soon.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.